We're gonna dive in to the last bit here, which is going to be the Twilight of the superheroes. So this is part 3 of our conversation about Alan Moore's greatest superhero comic story that was never told. If you've been following along, then you know that in our first episode, we dove into the why. Why does Alan Moore want to do this? What is it? What are the inspirations? We're talking about things like The Dark Knight Returns. We're talking about things like Secret Wars. We're talking about things like Crisis on Infinite Earths. Things that inspired Alan Moore to want to tell this story. Also, the idea that these characters, these superheroes, need to become mythological, right? To become the American myth, they need a strong beginning, middle, and end. And he said, well, we know the beginning of Batman. DC is intent on never leaving the middle of Batman. And I can't change that. But in Alan Moore's mind, he says, what I can do is provide an end point for the whole of DC, the same way that The Dark Knight Returns was essentially an endpoint for Batman. And creators can work backwards from this point, and readers will know if they want that concrete answer. How does it end? They can get that. That's what the point of this all was. Last week, we talked about the essential houses. We dove into 2 of the primary houses of superheroes and various characters that will inhabit the world of the Twilight of the superheroes. And those were, of course, the House of Steel and the House of Thunder. Talked about some really weird things going on with the House of Thunder. Go ahead and listen to the last episode, which are all split out, by the way. And a huge shout out to Arubero Snake for suggesting that we separate out the Twilight of the Superheroes episodes, deep dives, because those are doing very well for us. And, it's something that I hope people continue to check out. So we're gonna talk on this episode about the rest of the houses. We're gonna give you guys some updates on characters who are not necessarily a part of houses, the central location where a lot of the story will take place, what's up with Batman, and as promised, I will show you guys some artwork that was done by a collaborator of Alan Moore that represents a few of the characters that are in Twilight of the Superheroes. So here we go. We're going to start with the House of Titans. I'm sure you can imagine what the House of Titans is or who's in it, but I'm pretty sure you can't imagine what they're doing now. I'll refer to Alan Moore here. Quote, one of the 2 foremost clans making up this collection of lesser houses is a clan composed of the remains of the Teen Titans, now grown up and a hell of a lot grimmer and more frightening than they ever were in the past. They are led by an adult Nightwing who, trying to emulate and live up to the reputation of the Batman, has become every bit as driven as vicious as his mentor, but who lacks the depth of compassion and understanding that separate the Batman from all the other grim vigilantes. As a result, Nightwing is not an altogether nice character. This isn't helped by the fact that Starfire has been killed some years earlier.
Wait, repeat that?
I said, this isn't helped by the fact that Starfire has been killed some years earlier during a period when all the aliens were being forcibly expelled from Earth by the big powers who feared alien influence moving in to take advantage of the disruption and uncertainty in society. Other Titans who have died include Jericho, while some, including Kid Flash and Wonder Girl, have left the Titans to take up with the other clans, a cause of bitterness among the remaining Titans. So, the Titans represent, in comics, the next wave of heroes, the next step, the mantle passing down, right? These are the would-be main superheroes of the future. If time actually moved forward in DC Comics and people aged normally and things like that, by now, Batman would have retired. Bruce Wayne, rather, would have retired. Nightwing would either take up the mantle or just be Nightwing. But he would be that Batman you know,
Right.
and so on and so forth. Just the same way, like right now in DC, the Titans are going to be the main superhero team. That's what should happen in DC, right? Like that's supposed to be their future. Alan Moore is taking those characters who represent the future and basically saying, yeah, shit didn't go too well for them. And now Nightwing is a jaded, bitter, angry character that has very little to do, in my opinion, with the Nightwing that we all know and love. How does this
Big time.
How does this sort of idea make you guys feel?
I hate it,
I don't like it. Yeah.
especially for Nightwing.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you started that description of his character, I was very much like, ooh, Alan Moore has already lost the plot. That man doesn't know who this character is at all. But I think when you put all those events and just, hit them one by one, domino effect, I think there's a degree of that could make sense.
Like it could work, but I don't like the direction for the character regardless. Like
Yeah.
I can see the machinations there, but it feels like a stretch for him.
Yeah. It's hard for me to accept the idea that Nightwing could ever turn.
Yeah.
We talked about, would Nightwing be pro registration or anti or whatever, and I can never see him wavering from just good. Just whatever's good, whatever's best for people, whatever's best for humanity, being a smiling, happy, person for the most part, trying to inspire good.
The heart of DC, right?
In my opinion, yeah.
Yep.
And so to
Pretty good
see
positioned.
the main character, what I believe to be the main character of DC, turn heel in this way, it's hard to accept. But unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, Alan Moore doesn't stop there. I will go refer back to Moore's words here. So he talks about Hawk and Dove, and he says that Hawk may be renamed Warhawk and lives up to his name, a sort of super Rambo who Nightwing tends to use as a human weapon.
Jeez.
There is also the Cyborg. Victor Stone has had some rejection problems with his bioelectronic parts in the time that's elapsed since our present day. And as a result, more and more of his body has been replaced by mechanical parts, including one lobe of his brain.
Whoa.
He is forced into considering the frightening question of when exactly something stops being a person and starts being a machine. I think Marco confronts himself with that every day.
Every day, dude.
Quote, how much do you have to take out and replace before there's just a robot left?
That's some more shit right there, dude.
Yeah.
That fascinating. I would love that. And it's interesting because my image of Cyborg is the cartoon, like Teen Titans, and in that he has like part of his brain already, but I'm thinking back then it would have just been, his like little band across the forehead and just like part of his skin or whatever it might be. So yeah, I think so.
We just got our first ever super chat.
Oh
Yeah.
shit.
That's so awesome. Thank you, Atomic Hound. He says, first ever super chat. Doesn't feel like Alan Moore wanted to crap on Wolfman and Perez, turn Nightwing, and diminish Crisis. Yes. Yes. In both previous episodes, I talked about how I felt in reading Alan Moore's words on Crisis on Infinite Earths that he did not actually like the event. That he felt that the event hurt DC and that there was a part of him that wanted to undo what was done there. He doesn't explicitly say that. That's what I interpreted. And I do believe that taking these characters specifically and turning them on their heads so radically while also undoing the end of the multiverse was Alan Moore's way of rejecting Crisis on Infinite Earths. I do believe that. Thank you so much for that, Atomic Hound. Really appreciate it. And by the way, this all happened so fast. We didn't get the chance to set up cool pop-up images or anything like that for super chats, but all that's coming. So stay tuned for that stuff. Thank you. Let me go on because I want to tell you guys about the rest of the Titans because we're not done. One thing that helps take Stone's mind off of his own problems is that he must keep an eye on the Changeling, who has serious problems of his own. When the terrors of the world finally became too much for his hokey, lighthearted facade, the Changeling did what he always said he would do. He went crazy. Not completely crazy, but more and more these days he stays in animal form, or worse, in some awful halfway form between the human and the animal. Worse still, increasingly these days he is starting to adapt the forms of animals that don't exist outside of the increasingly tortured confines of his own mind. Before the story is out, he will have adopted a new identity calling himself the Chimera.
Oh, what?
That's happened in continuity
Oh, really?
somewhere along the line. Yeah.
It happened very, very, very recently. In fact, it happened right after Dark Crisis. Remember how in Dark Crisis, I think he gets shot by Deathstroke or something bad happens to him and he's incapacitated? They're able to bring him back, but he stays in animal form because he's traumatized by the events that happened to him.
That's right. It was a backup in one of the issues we read.
It was a backup.
Superman ones, yeah.
Yes.
I think in the Teen Titans book that Jeff Johns did post Infinite Crisis, the Titans are shot to the future somehow or another. No, the future Titans are brought back, is what it is. Okay. And it's like Tim Drake is Batman, and I think they've left. Beast Boy has just decided to stay in animal form, if I'm remembering that correctly.
I like these sort of darker takes. I don't like that Moore is so cynical about the world and how it's playing out with some of these things. Like they're heroes, and I feel like he's at this point now that we're describing the characters and where they're at. This feels like an extension of Watchmen and his cynicism therein about the world and how it could exist. But I think the Cyborg stuff's interesting. I think he has interesting concepts for the characters. I might disagree with some of them here and there, but I think he's thought them through to a point where it'll benefit his story.
Right.
You got to remember too, this is late 80s.
Right.
I mean, that's prime Thatcher time in England. And he's he's based in a more rural town in the north, I believe, which was like Thatcher would have cut off the north with her own hands if she could have. She would have gnawed it off.
Wow.
Like, she hated the poor and she hated the north. She very famously said she wanted Liverpool to fall off into the sea.
Yo, what?
Like people like Thatcher is nuts.
Wow.
When you really look into like the conservatism there. So, I mean, when you think about like Alan Moore's philosopher king in the YouTube chat says grimdark, that's where a lot of it comes from, is the political commentary, because late 80s Britain was drowning.
Wow. That's good context. And I think, Alan Moore's sort of what we interpret as his like cynicism and skepticism and things like that is clearly as informed by his opinions about people that read comic books and comic book characters as it is his own life experience and what he was dealing with at that time, as Kale points out. So I think all of the context of who Alan Moore is as a person and what he went through and what he's experienced is relevant to discussing Twilight of the Superheroes, because it's all there. It's there in Watchmen too.
So, Sylve mentions that you can see it in the B for Vendetta author's notes and stuff. Yeah,
absolutely. The last Titan that we need to talk about is Raven.
This could be good, dude.
Yeah, let's
I'm
go.
like at the edge of my seat every like at this point.
Because you never know, right?
Yeah, I don't know where they're going.
So I'll refer back to more. Raven is now an aging, very dignified sorceress. She stays with the Titans out of loyalty for the way they stayed with her in the past when she had troubles, but increasingly she finds herself drawn to the tempting notion of leaving the House of Titans and moving into one of the other houses, which is far more suited for her. This being the next house on our agenda for discussing, which is the House of Mystery. So I think that's interesting because I think that Raven continuing to be loyal to the Titans despite not liking where they're going, I would say that probably fits the character.
I think so. Yeah.
Do you feel like that's the only one we've talked about so far where like he actually hit the nail on the head?
Of what is familiar.
Sure. Right.
I think he does pretty well with Changeling and Cyborg as well. Well, and the Starfire death. I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
Would is Changeling an actual name that Beast Boy goes by?
That was his name before he got into the Titans. Yeah, when he was with Doom Patrol, was
Right.
Changeling.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Exposing my lack of knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've never proclaimed to be a DC aficionado. I don't mind being wrong or not knowing.
Does getting rid of Starfire feel lazy? Like I would have liked to see where that plays out as well. Like she's because she's an alien, right? So she would have been part of that wave of how do we now deal with removing a Titan from Earth, knowing that this is like a mandate that has been agreed upon across the board. Like that's an interesting wrinkle in his own idea, and I wonder if it's not just a way to not have to deal with like talking that through.
What do you mean?
Well, because earlier you said that there was this Earth-wide mandate to remove all aliens from Earth, but she is an alien, but she's still part of the Titans. And if this is now a kingdom, right, it's easier to deal with her having died to affect Nightwing than it is to have her live and have to discuss whether she remains as part of the Titans or if she has to leave and deal with that separation.
My answer to that is that Starfire, the very tension that you're talking about is exactly why she's dead. Because you wouldn't have just been able to expel her from the equation without resistance from the Titans because she is one. But the other houses are clearly, at least the ones we've talked about so far, much, much more powerful. And this is an agenda that everybody has. So you'll hear more about how this plays out, but you'll notice Superman is also an alien. But ain't nobody take him out of the equation.
Word. Oh shit. Okay, cool. We're cool.
I also think the death of Starfire, like we touched on how like, or I touched on how that would piss Nightwing the fuck off.
Right.
But like you got to think like she, along with Beast Boy, Cyborg, and Raven, like they're the core Titans. Robin has his own things going on. They don't.
Right.
They're their own little clique. So to have her be like the heart of the Titans to an extent, like that crushes a lot of optimism that Starfire really provides. And really drives them to a place where they will fight.
And I think people would, there are people who would say that this is an instance of fridging. I don't have any type of resistance to that argument, although I don't feel like the concept of fridging is always inherently a negative or bad thing. I think, Sometimes death is the catalyst of story, or it can move characters forward. In this case, that's what Moore was doing. I don't think he had some agenda against Starfire, although I will say, if you believe that he was frustrated by Crisis on Infinite Earths and how that went, and maybe didn't love the Titans, killing the heart of the team, maybe that was a shot. Who knows?
Revenge.
That's something we can't answer. But that's the House of Titans.
That was cool.
That is the House of Titans. We got more. We got several more. And I'm going to try to run through these because, there's a lot. House of Mystery is up next. So this has nothing to do with the actual, the House of Mystery that, existed before. This is just the name. So I'll refer to more now. This House of Mystery is built around Baron Winter's Georgetown mansion and is the residence of a number of DC supernatural characters. These include Jason Blood, aka the Demon, maybe the Spectre, Zatara.
Yeah.
Who's Zatara? Is it Zatanna?
It's Zatanna's father.
Okay.
Right. He would have died, though. Well, regardless. Keep going.
Dr. Fate and a strange amalgam of Baron Winter and Deadman. Baron Winter has had his mind burned out. I love that. He had his mind burned out in a psychic battle some years earlier and is now just an empty shell, except when he's inhabited by the spirit of Boston Brand, who uses the Baron's body as a kind of holiday home in the land of the living. The other person in the residence at this new House of Mystery is a reformed Felix Faust. The supernatural presences at the house have very little to do with the outside world and have instead devoted their pooled knowledge and talents to plumbing the depths of the universe's many mysteries, being all but inactive in the world of men.
So for context, Baron in Swamp Thing, both he and Zatara were part of an exorcism that was trying to contain some larger elemental force, and Zatara bursts into flames, which is why I was confused that he'd be here because he's dead technically. And Baron, there was some psychic backlash that just fried him, and he goes brain dead. So that's interesting because that plays into stuff that he has had in the past that he was writing about at that point.
There you go. Okay, great context. That makes sense.
It says his exact background is unknown, except he has an unexplained connection to the early biblical figures Adam and Eve.
Interesting. Baron?
Yeah.
And by the way, the House of Mystery would have been where Raven felt she wanted to be.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. You think about someone who's been through what Raven has been through in her life. You think about the fact that the Titans are now a shell of what they were. They don't represent what they represented. And she is more powerful than she's ever been in her life. Why would she want to hang around these people when she can hang around these supernatural forces and, figure out what else the universe has to offer? Earth is cooked. It might as well do something different, right? The House of Secrets is up next. This has nothing to do with the former House of Secrets. This is where the villains are at.
No, fuck.
Yeah, this is where the villains are at. And it features Joker, Luthor, Gorilla Grodd, Captain Cold, Catwoman, Kronos, and Star Sapphire.
Oh.
And Dr. Sivana, and maybe a few other people. Moore was not sure exactly who else would be there. But I think when you look at this reminds me of very 80s, Legion of Doom.
Legion of Doom, that's, yeah.
Those kinds of characters. Moore says the following about this. This house is powerful enough to defend itself against occasional attacks by the other hero-centered clans, but isn't otherwise especially active and thus tends to get left alone, largely because the province that these villains protect, somewhere up in the reaches of Nevada, is just as well looked after as the place controlled by the heroes, whereby hangs some sort of moral. So it's worth pointing out, for those of you who maybe didn't hear the last one, these houses are actually civilizations unto themselves, in the sense that regular people live there too. Right. And they essentially are, the regular people, the humans, worshippers of these godlike figures. And the heroes take care of these areas in the way that heroes would, and I'm sure they have some kind of, way of, maybe they have some caretakers that they employ or something like that to keep things in order, to keep things looking decent. But there's no world government. There's no like governing body of the world or any specific country. It's all superheroes, or in this case, villains. Let's move on to the House of Justice. This is the JLA, or what's left of it, because as you can probably tell, a lot of those characters have splintered off.
Yeah.
The lineup of the Justice League at the time of our story includes Captain Atom and the Blue Beetle, an Aqualad that has grown up to be the new Aquaman, and a Wonder Girl who has taken on the mantle of Wonder Woman after Wonder Woman herself opted out to become Superwoman upon marrying Superman. In addition to this, there is the Flash, Wally West, and the new female Flash, Slipstream. And he says, although I prefer the name Joni Quick, but this is by the by. Joni Quick.
Oh, that's funny.
There's also Captain Comet and a new female Dr. Light. Then you have the House of Tomorrow. This house is essentially the house of the characters who are known to time travel in DC. So the Rip Hunters, and I say Rip Hunters because they're all stuck here. If you remember, the Time Trapper set a trap, which is what trapped Rip Hunter and the Legion of Superheroes. This is where they all decided to like hang out together. Jonah Hex is here. Space Ranger's here. They're all trying to figure out how to get the hell out. That's basically what this house is about.
That's funny.
The last,
I don't want to deal with it.
Right? Yeah, like we gotta go. This is nuts.
What was the name of that house?
Oh, this is the House of Tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
The last house we have to talk about is the House of Lanterns. Very interesting stuff going on with the House of Lanterns. So, the Green Lanterns use alien power to protect various sectors of space. There are many Green Lanterns, of course. A handful of those are human beings, especially if you go back to the mid-'80s.
Most of them are human beings at this rate. Am I right?
Sure. Yeah, right. So that would obviously cause some problems when humanity and the other superheroes are trying to remove aliens from the equation. So here's more. The House of Lanterns, at the time our story opens, is abandoned and shattered, since all the Green Lanterns, being self-confessed agents of an alien power, the Guardians, have been banished from Earth during the anti-alien purges mentioned earlier, which resulted in Starfire's death, and which also resulted in the banishment from Earth of the Martian Manhunter, the Hawks, and any other alien characters I might have forgotten. Superman, since his own alien culture no longer exists, and since he has lived on Earth since infancy, has been made a citizen of the United States, and is thus exempt. Anyway, while the House of Lanterns no longer exists upon Earth, an emergency House of Lanterns has been set up on one of the moons of Mars. Here, the exiled Green Lanterns conspire with the other space powers, including the Rons and the Thanagarians, to restore their power on Earth.
Whoa.
The space powers, knowing through their intelligence resources of the imminent joining of the House of Steel and House of Thunder by marriage, are afraid that such a union will enable the Super/Marvel family to bring all the houses under control and unify Earth, as a resourceful planet ruled by a pantheon of invincible gods. The space people fear that such an empire might soon set its sights upon territories that are currently the province of the Hawks, Guardians, or Martians. The actual Green Lanterns residing on the House of Lanterns at this time are a reformed Sinestro, Carol Ferris, and Guy Gardner, Green Lanterns of Earth, Soto Yacht, the Daxamite, quote, ultimate Green Lantern, whose existence I hinted at in the story me and Kevin did for the Green Lantern Corps Annual, and maybe an aging Tomar Ray, just because I'd like to see what parrot men look like when they get old.
Wow.
What we just learned is actually a crux of the story of Twilight of the Superheroes, because it is about these aliens trying to stop and not just them, other people as well, trying to stop the joining of the two houses because they fear that that could lead to a conquest of space as well as Earth.
That is fascinating. And it makes sense, right? Because like the irony being Green Lanterns as the protectors now protecting from the rest of the sector from this problem planet that they once prioritized.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Wow.
I love
That's
it.
so cool.
I love it. Go ahead.
Sorry, Aaron did ask. Sorry if I didn't hear it, but for the story, was there a main character for the book? I think we chat through that in the first piece, but there's no like central POV necessarily, right?
Yeah, the central point of view characters, the characters who we see the story through, are Rip Hunter and Constantine.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, and they're big parts of the framing device, and then this version of the Constantine that lives in the Twilight of the Superheroes era is an older man who meets Rip Hunter, and then tells him, "Hey, man, like we gotta stop this, basically,
Do something about this shit."
Yeah. So now, there are a lot of other relevant characters who have varying degrees of import to the story. I want to talk about Batman really quick. So, this is from Moore's notes. Quote, "Nobody's actually seen him for years. He's rumored to be around, he's rumored to be active, and rumored to be doing something, but nobody knows what or even really if he might have died years ago." I'm not going to say anything more about Batman.
Ugh.
Because that is where we will begin next week when we talk about more of the story, whether or not Batman's alive or dead, what he might be doing if he is alive, and if he's alive, who he might be working with. So lots of questions to answer about that.
Wow.
Damn.
Also next week, we're going to get into, at least I think we're going to get into some of the like real life meta things that were happening when this document was found, which will take us into the 90s,
Okay.
into 90s internet, and how a journalist who is still alive today and who still works in comics today had a major influence over how the story of the Twilight of Superheroes was told. Now, I promised that I would show you guys an image drawn by a Moore collaborator that represents what some of these characters might have looked like, and so I will do that here in just a moment. This image is drawn by Don Simpson, and this is an image of what the primary members of the House of Thunder might have looked like. And you should be able to see that now. This is by Don Simpson, drawn in '99. And we have
Snazzy. Damn, that's a short ass dress.
I know.
What are you covering with that?
Not a lot. And if there's a breeze, we might be seeing a lot more than we bargained for.
Whoa. Jeez, you talk about her short ass dress. You got Captain Marvel's whole wiener sticking through his.
You ever see the ambiguously gay duo from Saturday Night Live?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This very much reminds me of that.
Yeah.
So we're looking at an image of Captain Marvel, Mary Marvel, and I'm assuming that is Captain Marvel Jr., not the son of them, but the whatever. What's his real name? Freddie.
Yeah.
Freddie. Yeah, Freddie.
Yeah. He looks like Elvis, right?
I can see that.
That's on purpose.
It is?
Is that
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, El- Elvis and Captain Marvel Jr. were like in real history, Elvis was a massive fan of Captain Marvel Jr.
Oh, wow.
And thus through comics, Captain Marvel Jr. has been made a massive fan of Elvis as time has gone
that's
on.
so cool.
I did not know
Oh, that makes sense in the movie then. They
Yeah.
make jokes about it. Oh,
Oh.
okay.
Yeah, they weren't jokes.
that.
Baz Luhrmann genuinely tried to make Elvis a superhero style movie in that vein.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
And it makes even more sense when you look at this image and you see that Mary Marvel is saying the House of Thunder, also known as Graceland.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
So pretty cool.
Yeah. Hound in the chat says they are very 90s renditions.
Yeah.
Very, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Peak 90s renditions. I would love to know, like, and maybe this is something we can talk about in the future, but like who the artist should have been or could have been, or who would have been the right person to do this story.
Not this guy. Too much wiener.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree at all. But yeah, this is the only thing we really have to go off of. A lot of other artists have done their renditions. I didn't want to share them because a lot of them are people who are just fans that wanted to show off what they thought these characters might have looked like, and I don't want to steal from them or anything like that. And I felt like Don Simpson, at least he had some connection to Alan Moore, so I did like that. Tom Scioli, who is an artist and writer, wrote Jack Kirby: The Epic Life of the King of Comics, actually put up a video on YouTube called Alan Moore's Interminable Ramble, which is what a lot of people refer to this as. And in it, he showcases some of his renditions of what these characters might have looked like. So it's a lot less, it's a lot more low to the ground. But if you're interested, that exists. But that's
neat.
Yeah, I love it. I'm so hyped. I think we've got 2 or 3 more of these to go. So 2 or 3 more deep dives into Alan Moore's Twilight of the Superheroes. If you're enjoying it, please do let us know. We appreciate all the feedback that we get on this. If you have questions that you want us to try to answer throughout, send them in, because we can deal with that. We can bake those in.
Atomic actually put a question in that got lost in chat, but does this enhance or diminish Alan Moore in terms of legacy? He said question for next week, so maybe we incorporate that.
That's an interesting question. That's actually that's something that's been on my mind in general with this, and something that I kind of wanted to address at the end.
Okay.
Because there are people whose worldview or whose view of Alan Moore is colored by this, even though it never came out, which I do think is unfair, but we'll talk more about that in the future. Thank you guys so much for listening. Before we cut out, if you would make sure you leave a like on the video if you're watching on YouTube. Follow if you haven't. Consider subscribing on Twitch. You can do that with your Amazon Prime / Twitch Prime subscription. Also consider supporting us on Patreon, where for as little as $3 a month, you get access to our newsletter, which each one of us, one a week, one goes out. We also have the ability to vote in book clubs. Anything that we put out, like a book club, comics versus, anything like that, is exclusive to Patreon first. Then it rolls out later on. So you do get early access over there. You get a shout out on the show, as you guys heard earlier, a superhero nickname and a shout out. Direct access to the pals, if that means something to you. And
Sneak peeks to stuff like this.
Exactly.
As well as content that we are trying out, and a whole new formats of stuff.
There's a whole other side of us you haven't even heard if you've never heard Palling Around.
Oh, that's true. Yep.
our exclusive show over there. So, encouraging you guys to take a look at that if you haven't. If you want to watch this show live, that's Twitch and YouTube every single Saturday at 10:15 a.m. Eastern. Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern for Pals Pulls. Listen to my interview with Kyle Starks. Kyle Starks, the writer of I Hate This Place and Where Monsters Lie. I thought it was a great conversation. It's a little over an hour, so give that a listen if you're so inclined. For everything else at the Comics Pals, Gail Simone endorsed Comics Pals, by the way.
Whoa.
That's going on the bio.
Hell yeah. Plugs, Kale.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Comics Pals. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at TotoInTow. That's TOTOINTOW. You can find my work at KaleWard.com. That's CALEWARD.com. I got a backflip to do, man. Terrified. God, I'm scared. Y'all muted?
You mute?
Am I having a
I'm
struggle?
sorry. I was typing. I think you'll be all right, Kale. And if you're not, that's content.
And if you're not, live from the hospital.
Yeah. We've hit 1,000 subscribers. My life has basically been sacrificed to the content gods now. Shit, this makes us YouTubers.
Uh-oh.
Oh, man.
Mom.
That.
I don't know about you, but I've been a YouTuber since day one. This is what I've wanted the entire time.
Ugh.
Marco.
You can follow me at Mr. Marco Enomoto on Instagram and Twitter. I've taken a break from One Piece, actually. It finally transitioned to a point where I had to watch on a separate platform because it finished on Netflix, and so I fell off for a hot sec. But otherwise, I've been catching up on reading a lot of poetry and some philosophy here and there. So if you're a fan of, I got some Bertrand Russell and then Sam Harris on discussions about like AI and what else has he touched on? And religion. Been my big things. So chat me up if you want to talk about that kind of stuff.
Chat GPT him up.
Chat GPT for me up, because that shit is fire. The new update just released. I haven't played with it yet, but I'm planning on to.
How do you know it's fire?
The prompts that people have been putting out and like the ways to optimize your interface with it has been very cool.
As for me, I am thinking about what's next after Twilight of the Superheroes. Once we've wrapped that up, what do we do next? I don't know. Give us your suggestions. We already got one suggestion that I thought was pretty juicy. I enjoy the test of going back and learning about things that I don't know about and don't have context for, and figuring out if I can share what I'm learning in a way that's compelling. So if you've got something that you think is juicy, that you think I probably don't know about, and maybe I know about it, but I don't know the full story. If you think there's a story worth telling, submit it. Submit it. Maybe we'll do it. Thank you, guys. Oh, go ahead, Kale.
Yeah, never mind. I'm not gonna say it out loud. I went, ooh, this will be a great joke. And then I hit like that last word of it, and I went, don't do that.
Were you going to accuse me of being a racist like Tyler did on Thursday? Thank you guys so much for listening. Until next week, we're the Comics Pal signing off. Take care, guys.